What are you saying, people? We're back. It's another episode of The Panel.
Boy, it's been a long time we've done The Panel.
Bro, it's you.
It's been a long time, you know.
But it's you, though.
But don't worry about that.
It's you, innit? You're the one running the panel, you know.
long time, you know.
Listen. Do you know how people are asking and screaming and saying, where's the panel?
I know.
Yeah?
The telephone calls, the WhatsApps, the inboxes I get. Robert, what's going on?
Yeah,
I'm like, yeah. Mad.
But listen, guys, like just to say, we're going to be a lot more consistent with
100%.
The panel. I mean, to be fair, you know what? The panel was Rob's concept, innit? So let me allow him a bit, innit? So, yeah. But listen, thank you so much for liking and subscribing.
Yep.
You know, we are seeing the numbers climbing up.
Yep.
You know, as we say to all of you, if you want to come onto the podcast, you know, whether it's the panel or the social worker and the mentor, you email thesocialworkerandmentor@gmail.com.
And just to mention, guys, remember, we've got the Patreon channel up and running now.
Yeah.
So CPD, any university students that need help or support, we've got the CPD coming, especially for next month in April.
Yeah, we do.
And yeah, there's many great things happening, man. But
100%.
once again, thank you for the support.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've got so much in the pipeline coming as well. So yeah, there's a lot to look forward to.
A lot. So guys, listen. Following the episode that we did with Sia on housing, that episode literally blew up. It did. And in the messages that we got on TikTok and on Instagram, everybody was saying, nah, you need to panel this, because everybody wanted to know a bit more about housing. So what we've got today, we've got esteemed, seasoned housing professionals here.
No, first of all, the energy is amazing.
Yeah, see, the energy is nice.
It's amazing.
We've got a lot of experience here today. You know, we're going to go in deep. We're going to be raw.
Hey, do you know, I can hear all of them laughing in their stomach now. You know?
I know. Can you feel it? But yeah, let's start with introductions. I want to start from the very, very end. Introduce yourself, please.
Hi, so I'm Naomi.
Wait, that's it? No, what do you do?
So I'm Naomi. I'm a service manager within temporary accommodation. So I manage all of the temporary accommodation for our residents.
Amazing.
Excellent.
Okay, hey, I'm Nevada. I'm a qualified social worker, but currently I'm in temporary accommodations as well.
Okay, and finally?
I'm Brooklyn, and I work within a neighbourhood team and managing tenanted residents.
Excellent. Let's clap. All of you.
Amazing.
Right, so I'm going to be straight. Rob, you know me, I'm not going to hold back today.
Yeah.
Because this is a housing panel.
That's a serious topic.
Yeah, serious topic,
It's a frustrating topic, yeah.
So I guess for me to kick it off is just to kind of ask all of you the state of housing across the UK. What is going on? We know what's going on, but within your departments, what is it that you're seeing at, in terms of the pressure points? What are the main pressure points? Not just like the housing stock, but what are the other pressures that maybe people on the outside, other professionals, we don't see? What are the pressures?
I would say the size of the accommodation. A lot of families, a lot that need that 2 beds, 3 beds and 4 beds. There's a need for that. There's a high need for that. There's a lack of it. Repairs have gone through the roof. The quality, the standard of housing is not there. It's not nice at all.
Why is that though?
Yeah.
Well, within temporary accommodation, our stock is private landlords. So it's what landlords are renting to the council, then we rent to our residents. So yeah, the quality of it, if they could get a better, money on the private market, they would, but the quality of it is not the best. So who's going to rent it on the private market? So they give it to the council. It's literally the bottom of the barrel, if I'm honest. And it's literally not the best quality, but we have to house residents. So it's kind of like that whole catch-22.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold you a bit, Naomi, to go in a bit more. So if the quality is not there, are local councils not going in and vetting it? Because what I've kind of seen a lot online are lots of people complaining, my property's in disrepair. I've sent emails, I've sent letters, then they're going to like their MPs. Yeah. Why is there such a disconnect? Why is it that there's that intervention is not there if they're saying it and yet nothing's getting done?
The thing is, so with temporary accommodation, you've got the property, you've got the owner, and you've got the manager agent, and then you've got the council. So the middleman is the managing agent. So our contract would be with the managing agent, who then manages it on the owner's behalf.
Right.
So
Okay.
we wouldn't pay for the repairs. We have a contract with the managing agent. The managing agent needs to get the owner to pay for the repairs, and they could be in another country. They may not have the
Jeez.
money.
Okay.
There's so much that goes into it. And again, if it's in a block like that's owned by a local authority, you've then got to go to them to get the rights to get the repairs on. There's so many complications. It's not a quick fix all the time. To be like, the standard should be a certain standard. You know, I think all local authorities have a certain standard of accommodation they provide, that meet like the FRAs, the EPC, like all of that. But it's just like a lot of it is damp, mold. It's just the quality is not the best. It's not the best.
Okay.
You know, you do get some good TAs, temporary accommodation, but it's not the best at all. It's really not.
Nevada?
I'd say for me, a lot of the issues I've seen is supported housing. So there's a middle. Supported housing sits within the middle of general population and people with additional needs. So because the waiting list for supported housing whilst in temporary accommodation is so high, you've got people who are taking on, we have to house them, but they may not be able to get into a supported accommodation. So we're putting them in general population in temporary accommodation, and they can't maintain their tenancies. So they keep, they end up being evicted and coming back. Do you know what I mean? Because there's not
It's a
revolving door. Or then we discharge someone who technically shouldn't be in a temporary accommodation because they can't manage their tenancy.
So can I just ask, what type of clients are you getting? Am I right in saying, is it mental health? Is it young people?
Yeah.
Is it marriage couples? Is it... so what's a clientele of clients or families that you're getting?
So in terms of the supported housing part, it would be someone, it could be anyone off the list, but I'd say substance misuse, mental health issues, discharging people who we know are kind of being set up to fail because they might have a hoarding issue, or they might not be able to clean themselves or clean up after themselves, pay their rent, cook. They don't have any family support. So we know they're going into that tenancy, and there's a high chance that they shouldn't be there.
Right.
But we have a duty of care to house them, whether it's interim or long term. They still have to be, accommodated in the meantime. Yeah. And then they could be discharged because they're not paying their rent, because they are causing ASB issues. They're disturbing other neighbours, but we know they have those issues.
It's a quick question, right? Yeah. So, we all know. Mental health right now, and I suppose definitely in you lot's line of work, mental health is a serious issue, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Where you get a lot of families or the type of cases that you're getting, they're really struggling with their well-being, mental health, drugs, could be disability, whatever, whatnot. So, what are you guys doing what's the support that you're providing for them in terms of understanding, okay, so you've got a person that's, I don't know, he's got a drug issue. He goes to like a drug rehab center, whatever, whatnot, gets his daily medication. So in terms of someone who possibly might not keep up to date with his rent, or when he goes to the council now, he's abusive, he's shouting, using inappropriate language, what support is there for someone like that?
So obviously, for you to get temporary accommodation anyway and get a homeless application done, you have to be in priority needs. So you need to have some type of level of mental health or support needs, or kids vulnerability. And like you said, we are finding a lot of people with mental health that are coming through that shouldn't be going into general needs TA, and that's what temporary accommodation is. It's general needs. But the gap between temporary accommodation and going into supported, there is that gap. And because there is that gap and you've got that interim Section 188 duty, you still got to accommodate them. Now, we know it's not going to be suitable accommodation, but it's the best that we can give at this moment in time. But when they do go into that type of accommodation, we've got a housing intervention team who have AMP social workers within that team who can support them, that have links in with all mental health, the mental health teams within the borough. You've got housing employment team who also can help them maximise their income, just to make sure they're on the right benefits, PIP, DLA, all these different types of things. So you've got floating support. So you have to interlink them within them services. Okay, right. The only thing with that though is evidence shows that someone will go in, they'll be placed today, and then within a couple of days, they're being discharged because they've already had that ASB.
Right.
And because it's general needs, you're breaching tenancy. So by the time the services are actually getting involved, it's too late. Yeah. And then now what's happening is if we discharge under Section 188, that interim duty, they're now street homeless.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And then the rough sleepers team will then pick them up. and then it's just that whole thing, and it's like.
It's an overlap within an overlap, isn't it?
It's constant.
It's constant.
And then you've got the
constant.
56 days of the investigation of your homeless application.
And then you get the letter that comes through, because I've had to view this as a social worker as well.
Right.
And that can take over 56 days. It doesn't mean it's going to be 56 days.
Right.
It could take longer.
Sorry, can you just elaborate a bit more on the rough sleepless team? Because I've heard of that, but obviously for our audience and practitioners who watch this, like what is that?
So the rough sleepers team is a team that go out all throughout the night. So you've got the morning team who stay in the office, and then you've got the afternoon, the late night team who go out and walk around the borough and actually find people who are asleep on the streets and offer them food, shelter if they want it.
Does that happen?
Yeah, it does happen. They offer them food, shelter. They've even got
I don't see
lift.
that.
It's at night.
But this is what we don't hear about.
No, we don't hear about that. I'm
We've
actually being
got a
honest with you.
specific team who do that throughout the whole night. I'm literally through gone past 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning till 5 a.m. They're working till 5 a.m. that go out in the night and walk the streets.
Is this generic in all boroughs?
Yeah.
But then it's not brought to the forefront enough, isn't it?
Didn't even know that.
Yeah.
And in that team, the rough sleeper team, they've got, like I said, AMP social workers who are also on the street walk with them. So you've got, just in case that mental health gap. So they're trying to cover all angles. But a lot of the time what you do find is rough sleepers don't want to be confined in a home. They feel like being in between 4 walls is confining them. They feel suffocated.
Is that due to mental health, I suppose?
Yeah.
And the diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of them don't want to go into that shelter. Some of them do, and some of them change their life around. But you've got that team walking around, they actually know each other. They'll be like, oh hey, how are you? Like, because they saw each other last night or the last week or last month. They're regulars, and they make sure that they're always near enough in the same spots. So you pick them up, and then you've got new ones.
Yeah.
That you're like, oh, I haven't seen you before. What's kind of happened? And you kind of hear their background story, and it's like, wow, and then what happens is they get like a ticket. To be fast tracked, basically, the rough sleepers, to come into the town hall the next day or whenever they feel they're ready, and they haven't got to explain everything. They just show the ticket and it fast tracks them, so they haven't got to go through that because they've already been vetted by our rough sleepers team,
Right.
just to help them not to have to relive that conversation again. But a lot of the time, I'll be honest, I don't really see them.
Right.
They don't actually come in.
Do you know what's alarming, right? Yeah, is that obviously housing, they work very close with education, social care, youth offending, etc. And as I said, as on a personal level, but also more importantly, professionally, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. So how much awareness is given to the other departments with the type of
Before you go in, Ro, I do want to bring in Brooklyn, because Brooklyn, in terms of your role as well, what Nevada and Naomi are saying, what is it that you've seen as well? Because actually, before we even started, we were talking about resident engagement.
Yeah.
What's the feedback you're getting?
I think most engagement kind of that we gain is that that kind of services aren't singing from the same hymn sheet. There's like they're like, you work in the same organisation, but does anyone talk to each other?
Right.
So like there's a gap between us and say like adult social care, and us and repairs, us and temporary accommodation. So the feedback that I gather is that we aren't all kind of working as we should, or a resident, for instance, will be discharged from one service and then they're like, oh, can you not see kind of previously what happened? And then it's like, no, we have to kind of go back and get in touch with that department, find out. They maybe don't want to go into the details, say if it's domestic abuse, it's something that they don't want to keep reliving, but they're finding that where there isn't that connection with services, they are going over and over things. And I would probably say that's a big thing in my role, sort of like definitely a lot of pressure. As said before, the quality of housing, the availability of housing, there just isn't that housing stock there. And I think it's really easy to say, oh, like there isn't properties available. And they're like, oh, but there's that property across the road's been empty for 2 weeks or it's been empty for a month. But we can't disclose what's happened there, or the void turnaround time, and they're huge pressures that we face.
Quick question. When you say quality of housing, because I know you mentioned that as well, quality, is that in terms of it's just old housing, there's not enough new build? Like, what do you mean? What does that mean? Quality of housing? I'd
probably say in a lot of boroughs, it's aging stock, and you kind of can't knock them down and start again. Right. It's sort of making good what's already there. Yeah. And sometimes things like damp and mold are structural. They're inevitable, but it's also a lot down to overcrowded households and the way people live. Yeah. But then due to the housing not being available, you can't just move a family of 6 from a 2-bed into a 4-bed because it's not available.
Right.
So it's like having to manage where they are living, kind of adapt the home as well as you can, and also be realistic that like you could be bidding for the next kind of 2 to 3 years to get the household you need.
Some cases longer as well.
Exactly.
A lot longer.
A lot longer.
Oh, that's a big question. Can you explain bidding?
Yeah.
I mean, I know.
But
Can you
break it down.
Yeah,
the bidding, or the banding.
Yes, so I know every kind of borough is different in terms of banding. And a lot of that is covered by allocations, which we don't necessarily do. And it's really hard to explain to people that like allocations and then housing management are two different things.
What's the difference?
So with allocations, they will be the one that will receive the application, like the homeless application or the transfer application. And they'll receive all the medical information, and then it goes to an external board where they will say kind of what the priority should be in terms of if they should be higher with medical or if they're adequately in the banding they should be in. And then they'll then be able to bid on whatever bedroom size their allowance is. Currently, I've worked with a lot of families who are in Band C, and they're like, I've bidded for 6 years and I've had nothing. And I've kind of been like 1,000 in the list. What do you get to get in that top, say, 1 to 10?
Right.
Because when you're
Which
at
is
1,000,
like a Band A.
yeah,
I guess, yeah.
like when you're kind of coming in at like the 1,000th bidder, they're like, is there even a point? Or for instance, a family that are in a 2-bed need a 4-bed, and they're like, only 2 4-beds are coming up a year.
Right.
But we find that there's been quite kind of since a lot of illegal subletting, successions. Obviously, people will succeed a tenancy, so a family will stay kind of like different generations will stay in a house. So the houses aren't becoming available for other people to move into.
Okay.
Is that so quite a thing?
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
definitely.
And I think we're kind of now more so than ever suffering the whole being able to buy your council home, and then you've got people that have used their right to buy and probably are earning a very high amount of money, and you've got families that are really in need of housing in a low-income household that aren't able to even get into a home.
Okay.
Basically, yeah.
I wanted to ask you all, because I think, Rob, this has been brilliant to hear
amazing,
from all three of
Very
you, because I
educational,
guess from a social worker's perspective, I don't hear this. Education, we don't.
No.
And also, one thing I do think is that housing get a lot of criticism. I say just like social work.
Yeah,
and
I must admit, I do.
And I'll be honest. I'll be honest. Yeah, I also had. I'll be honest. I had that level of ignorance as well. I think it was when we met Sia. But even speaking to you guys, I had that level of ignorance, but it's now completely dropped. And what would you say to people who are listening, say, oh, housing don't do this, you guys don't do that, this and this and this? What would be your kind of, I guess, your pushback? Because obviously it's a different kind of pressure that we don't know. Go on, Brooklyn. I'll start with you and then come to Nevada and Dami.
I always say it's obviously really hard because someone that's their home is like your safe haven. And if, for instance, someone is sort of experiencing issues with a neighbour, or there is like anything like that, you can't. If it's your job, you leave and you go home, and the problem's left at work. But at home, you can't escape that. And I think for me, a massive thing, I always feel really guilty sometimes leaving, and I'm like thinking about things at work that are like, you almost feel guilty that you're kind of hands are tied in a certain situation, or kind of how it was dealt with. But I think for us, it's like the caseload is unimaginable, and it's kind of knowing and prioritising, like, obviously issues that are going on, but kind of what issue takes the lead over another issue. And it's hard to explain that to someone who is, for them, they're living in hell. But it's like, and I completely can kind of empathise with that, but there's also kind of in terms of like legislation and policy, someone's situation that's worse off and that has to be kind of take the lead.
I agree.
Nevada?
I would say, like you, I was all kind of against housing previously, having come from social services, and I've worked in social work longer than I've done housing. So I would kind of have the same mindset, not knowing what was going on until I've done it now. and it's difficult, and you can only manage as much as you can because there's more people that need a home than the homes available. So there's always going to be someone not getting the support that they need. Someone's going to be homeless. There's more, domestic abuse now. So people are moving homes. It's difficult. The population is growing, and the amount of homes that are coming in is just not matching that. The cost with the crisis, I'm sure we'll discuss. People can't afford to live where they want to stay. People can't afford to stay in these London boroughs. So it's a constant catch up. And I think that's something I didn't see previously. But now in temporary accommodation, which is kind of like a long term, it's like permanent accommodation for as long as it possibly can be. Do you know what I mean? Because people are in TA for 10, 15 years. So some people are now moving into the boroughs that they were temporarily placed in, and that becomes their support system, their borough now. So every case is different, but there is a lot of challenges, and it's just about managing, like you said, what is in more need, and you just can't you can't win, to be fair, because there's always going to be someone that needs a property, or someone's that, for example, I know Naomi will talk about a team that she manages in terms of landlords wanting their accommodations back, and that's a challenge in itself, because now we have a duty to move those.
So what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
So the landlords, managing agents, they rent their properties to the council, but if they decide they want to sell their house, or they want their house back because they've got a private private person who wants to pay 5 times more than the council,
right? Okay.
We have to find them a new home. They could move 3 times. Do you know what I mean? And then I guess you can go into that some more. But that's a huge challenge.
For me, housing is a passion of mine. My nature is to help people. That is just my drive. And I'm determined to make sure I achieve that goal. So anything I put my hand to or my name to, you're going to get 1,000 out of me. And like Brooklyn said, you do go home, you think about these on the way home, when you're at home, when you're showering, things you shouldn't even, your head is thinking, because these are people's lives. My decision impacts your life. If I don't act on something within a timely manner, that's an impact on someone's life. And for me, that can't sit well with me. If I don't give my 100, it just won't sit well with me. So anything I do, I make sure I put my all in. And when it comes to residents, giving them their options, I think that is really important. We talk about policy and legislation, and that's all well and good. We have to follow that. But at the same time, I'm human. And I empathise with these people. You sit and listen to stories and you're just like, wow, your heart bleeds for them, because it's hard. Like you said, we go home, we have our own lives, but then they're in this situation. So for me, it's just about giving them their options, and actually making them understand the policies, making them understand the legislation, making them understand that your decisions on what you choose to do, this will be the impact and the outcome if you go down this route. So they actually have the bigger picture, because like you said, if you don't understand housing, you just expect, I want my house, I need a house, this is what I need.
That's right.
But the bigger picture is the policies that's fighting up against me.
The pushback.
This is right. And it's making them understand what is actually, what is there. I can't give you something I don't have. And this is the reality of the situation. And like what Nevada was saying is, temporary accommodation is privately, it's manned. So if a landlord wants their property back, I've got to move you. You might have moved there 2 weeks ago. They may say, I want my property back, serve notice, and now I've got to move you all over again.
It's hard.
I've got so much I want to ask.
I know, I've got so much questions as well,
Okay, all right.
Go.
All right, so guys, I work within youth offending, and I work very close with the prison system. So there are a lot of young people or gentlemen up to the age of like 25, 27. I meet them at the prison. I take them to the approved premises. They obviously stay at the approved premises for up to like a year and a half. I'm sure you're aware of all these cases, So they stay at the approved premises for a year. The probation and myself will then contact housing, depending on the borough. As we know, if you're a single person nowadays, you've got no chance, right? But from what I've seen working with different boroughs, which I'm not going to name, it is kind of getting better. And I do find that they're supporting ex-offenders who do come out the prison system a little bit more now, right? What's your guys' experience working with ex-offenders and those coming out of prisons, male and female?
Yeah, I think so. For us, we've got a new team that's come into place, the prevention team, and they work closely with the prisons. They go out to the prisons when people are about to be released, because they make homeless applications from when they're in prison, so we can actually get something ready for them when they do come out.
And work on it.
Exactly, so it's not unsettled.
Does Housing Attend Mapper as well?
Yep, Mapper, all of that.
Okay.
And we do find that a challenge as well. I'll get back to that as well, placing people that are registered on the Mapper. But we can't penalise, we can't discriminate, they still need housing. We've got a prevention team, and they actually work with ex-offenders, and a lot of them go into private rented accommodation, which is called PRS. But the issue is it's disclosing that to the landlord.
Right.
And once they see they've got a criminal conviction,
at their
depending on what it
discretion.
is, this is it. And that is a challenge you're faced with, because you're right. You know, being single, a single male or even female coming in for housing is, you have to meet a priority need.
Yeah.
You know, under the Housing Regulation Act, you have to meet a priority. There's a certain level of what you need to meet.
So to cut you right,
Yeah.
This is actually true, right? Yeah. I'm not going to name the borough, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying this in third person, right? Yeah. So I took a gentleman, came out the prison system, probably about 2 years ago.
How old was the young person?
At the time, he was 18.
Okay,
Right. Yeah.
right.
So we went to one of the civic centres, right? Yeah. And so we've gone to the desk. Anyway, so we've gone to the desk and we complete the housing form. So we kept trying to ring the actual housing officer. Couldn't get through to the housing officer. Anyway, I'm very passionate about my young people, so like you got to deal with me in it, right? Yeah. So if you're not answering the phone to my young person, you got to deal with me. Like, where are you? What are you doing? Why have you not answered the phone? Anyway, so we get to the desk now, and you know what the person said to the young person? He said, "If you haven't got a drug problem, HIV, or disability, you're not a priority."
Yeah.
I was like, "Rah, what?" I said, "Say that again, partner." I could say that again. He said to me, "If you haven't got a disease such as HIV, a drug problem, or a disability," he said, "you're not a priority." He said, "Mate, you're better off doing private renting." And me and the person went to McDonald's. I was kind of quiet. He was just chatting, enough, cussing, whatever, whatnot. I was thinking, right. But that's the harsh reality of, I suppose, to a degree, of what's really going on.
Bro, priority
Single.
versus need versus want versus stock.
That's right.
Yeah. That is it.
That's it, bro.
Yeah.
You understand? Yeah, and that, as a professional, that took me for 6 months. Like, wow.
Yeah.
But is that the reality, though?
That's the reality.
That's the reality.
And I would say as well, after lockdown, you saw a lot of people who are working class coming in for homelessness. People on salaries on 35k up are needing help.
Yeah.
So it's not just a thing of vulnerability of having low income. It's people that are working that actually need help also, but they don't meet that threshold unless you have a child.
Yeah.
And then you make priority needs.
Yeah. And they're seen as working as well.
If you're working, that means you're able and capable to find private rental accommodation.
Mine is blown.
But the cost of living on 35k plus, it's not matching. Do you know what I mean? Because
we're in a different time. You know, I think these laws need to change. That we're in a different time of, you know, we've gone through so much within this. Like, it's just, we're in a different time.
It's not catching up.
It's not. They're not gluing. They're not gelling together. It's not making sense.
Yeah. Go on, Brooklyn. And I want to ask you all a question after.
In terms of my role and sort of like offenders, we see a kind of different side. It's as in my role, if you're sentenced, you end up going to prison. If you're able to get somebody to kind of manage your tenancy and pay the rent, the person who goes to jail can their tenancy can remain.
Okay.
And then you might have a neighbour who will say something like, "That flat's empty. The person's in jail. They're a criminal. They shouldn't be allowed to live there. There's people that need homes," which is true. There are people that need homes, but just because you've gone to jail and you've committed a crime, it doesn't mean that you're not worthy of having a home.
But you know what, though? As I said, I work with a lot of serious offenders, right? Yeah. And a lot of them, when they're in prison, when I go visit them in the prisons now, Robert, I lost my accommodation, you know.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
A lot of them tell me, a lot of them don't keep their accommodation.
Because they might not have that support, which you're talking about, to maintain that tenancy.
Yeah. So it's like, if that support isn't there, then unfortunately they are going to lose it. But if they do, then it can remain. But it's hard to explain that to someone that is like, I've got a friend who's needed a house for 10 years and that flat's there. And I completely understand.
Is there a period that you can keep the permanent accommodation whilst you're in jail? Is there
I
a
don't
time
know if
scale?
there's a set time scale, but I know currently I've got a case that's been about 8 years.
Wow.
Okay. And someone's paying their rent.
Someone's paying the rent, going in, ensuring like there's no active leaks, there's nothing in that property.
Doing the spot checks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So when you say support, you mean like a family member or like a friend?
Family member,
to
a
maintain
partner,
it,
a friend.
Yeah, child.
And the
yeah.
council, they're happy with that, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow,
That's interesting, 'cause
Very
for
interesting.
us-
I didn't know that, you know.
That's interesting because for us, that's a breach of tenancy. So we're jumping on that like hotcake. So if, for example, we've heard through probation, because we've got a quite good working relationship with the police and the probation.
Yeah.
So when someone's been on remand, once they're sentenced, that's it. Breach of tenancy, discharge, house has been taken back.
Is that because it's TA though?
Yeah,
Because
possibly.
that's probably the difference.
Yeah,
Possibly, because we would not be holding that property.
No.
But again, it's temporary
TA,
accommodation,
that's
so it
why,
could be
yeah.
different.
Yeah.
So can I ask a question here? It's probably gonna sound so dumb. Yeah, because I know Brooklyn, you mentioned about the feedback about what residents are saying. So why is it within housing, the internal departments, do you not all like have meetings where you all just sit down and talk? Because it's the same thing to do with social services, because it's like everyone says, oh, when it comes to social workers, we're not talking to these professionals. And it's like the same thing's happening. Do you not have internal departmental meetings where you all meet like once a month? Do you know what I'm saying? Like Brooklyn, I'm saying from your department, you'd be there. Like,
Temporary accommodation.
do you not all sit down?
We don't. I find,
Right, okay.
until it becomes sort of like the need for a professionals meeting,
Yeah.
there kind of isn't that round the table. And I don't know whether that's due to sort of people's caseload, the fact that, from my experience, people kind of that have like different social workers or different people that work on the cases, and it kind of moves around. I don't know if it's due to that, but those conversations aren't had.
But that's a problem then.
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely.
It's definitely a problem, and also our systems are different.
Yeah.
So each, like, I don't know, social services, I believe they use Mosaic.
Mosaic, yeah.
We don't have access to that due to data protection.
Data protection, yeah, you can't.
Like,
Yeah,
we don't
yeah.
have access to our housing systems.
Yeah.
So our systems don't even talk anyway. So what you may have on file for someone, I won't have access to that.
Yeah.
But because they've told you and you work for the local authority, they deem that you've told the local
Everybody.
authority.
And
So
bro,
everyone
this is why
knows.
we have the strategy meetings now.
Yeah, but then even
Where
strategy
explain
meetings,
everything, yeah.
I barely see housing in those rooms.
That's
I
true.
do not understand. If we've got a case, and I was just wanting to go on and talk about that, we might have cases to do with domestic abuse or fear of violence. It's like you've got to jump through 20 people to get a housing professional to be at that strat.
Yeah.
Why is it so hard to get a housing professional, or it depends on what you said, Naomi, you know, as to who in the department. Why is it hard for housing to be there at strategy meetings or professionals meetings? Because you're quite key.
See, I don't know if I agree, and I think maybe it's my experience, and maybe I'm just very vocal. I'm very just there all the time anyway,
Yeah.
and I like to know, because when I place with people or help people, I like a holistic approach, and for me to be able to help you, I need to know from this person, that service, this what is going on, so that we can actually give the best outcome for you. So. That's me. I take a holistic approach.
Okay.
And
Right.
if you don't have all the right people in the room, you're not going to have the right outcome.
That's right.
So for me,
100%, yeah.
I mean, like I said, I think again, it's each officer to their own.
To their own.
Yeah.
But strategy meetings, you make sure
Definitely,
you're there.
I attend. I sit on merit panels. I sit in all of them things because it's important. You need to know whether I feel like it's a need for me right now. It may be a need for me in 10 weeks' time or
Right,
a week's
okay.
time. But yeah, I do agree with you. I do see a lack of housing in some of these meetings, if I'm honest. But then again, it's who is the person who's the chair of that meeting, and that's who needs to be inviting the housing.
That's
And
a
also
fair
as well,
point.
It's true, it's
it's
true.
who you know. You know, if say you just started a service, let's be honest, I don't know about you, but does our local authority say this person's for this service?
That's true, you
Do you know what I
know.
mean? So if you're new,
That is very true.
who do you know who to go to as
No, you're
well?
right.
You know,
Yeah, it's
it's
true.
who you know as well.
Do you know what's so mad what you're saying? Because what you're saying, because I remember I had a housing case, it's only because I knew Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I just messaged her on Teams, but that's
it.
because I know Brooklyn. That's
Yeah.
what I can say.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's who you know. But
Yeah.
if you don't know, it's like you've got to go through that generic housing inquiries.
Yeah,
yeah.
And then it says, oh, we'll get back to you.
Like
Yeah.
Then
5 working days or whatever that
then
is.
somebody
Yeah.
says, oh, I've got back to
Yeah.
you, but Nana, no, it's this person. You go to that
Yeah.
person, no, it's not my department, Nana, it's this person.
They've left.
Yeah.
They've left. No, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. But I think, Brooklyn, what you mentioned about not having that meeting amongst housing,
Yeah.
that
I
is
think
an
that's
issue
important,
because as
yeah.
social workers, when we have maybe our service meetings, we would have meetings with different social departments, child protection, early help, we'd all come together. But I think that is something that needs to happen with housing. You all actually should be speaking to it internally.
On top of that as well, just a quick thing, this is a question to all of you as well. So as we know, there's an increase in knife crime and gang culture, and you know, I work with a lot of people that their families or the young person has a threat to life. And I know this is to all of you, right? How do all of you deal with that? Because when you have, I don't know, a person or a young person that lives in, I don't know, let's say South London, and they've had a threat to life due to him being in a gang situation, and then the situation has then gone to the family home, and then the siblings and the mum and dad,
they're at risk.
You know, they're at risk.
And social care is involved.
So how do all three of you deal with that situation?
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Go on, Brooklyn. I'll come to the.
So for me, we'd usually kind of get some sort of report from the police or kind of whatever sort of agency we're dealing with that. The family would usually go into some sort of temporary placement. If it kind of depended on the severity, it's usually out of the borough. Just so it's obviously safer that way. And then they would be able to bid on properties available. Alternatively, they can contact another local authority and explain they're fleeing due to the situation, and they can go kind of through that borough's housing advice situation. Or if it's sort of a less severe case, it can be presented to a housing panel, and they would then get the highest bidding priority, and they have it's sort of like a 4 to 6 month window to bid.
Who's this on the panel? Sorry to ask you.
So it goes into the allocations to their panel. And they would be given, it's A2 banding where I work, and they are then able to bid on the allowance needed, a property allowance. Then if it's kind of been 4 to 6 months, they haven't got anywhere with it, a direct offer is made, and they kind of get a one-time offer to view a property, and that's presented to them. And due to it may not be kind of their desired area.
I was just about to ask that. Right. No, go on. Let Brooklyn go.
The risk and the need to move. Usually, they would be kind of. This would be the best thing for you to take.
Okay, go on, Nevada.
I was just going to say, I've had a situation where the child was at risk. They had been stabbed, and the parents were in denial. And they did not want to move. So that happens as well, because some parents are actually not aware for various reasons how deep their child is in. Do you know what I mean? So they also have to then think of their other children, you know,
kind of uprooting
that child from the school. Or they don't know, they don't believe what's happened, or it could not be my son, do you know what I mean? So they don't want to move.
Or why should I have to move myself?
Why should I have to move? Or they've been offered something, and then it's a B&B. It's somewhere not ideal. What do you do?
I'm so glad you said that.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So that's
Rod, I'm going to push you a bit further, before I come back to Brooklyn and Naomi, the B&B bit. Lots of families I've worked with, I've gone to see them in B&Bs, and they are absolutely...
they're livid.
They're livid.
They're not
because they basically saying, no, I'm in this B&B, and it's like, from what they're saying to me, shared kitchen, bathroom, this and this, and I don't know anything in terms of timescales. What's your experience on that in terms of it?
It does happen.
It does happen.
But I guess once you approach the council for homeless and you've met the priority need, they still have their 56 days plus the team that do the initial assessment to complete a final decision.
Right.
So it's an interim place, because you might, after the assessment, be found that we don't have a long-term duty to give you accommodation. So let's just say that it's 56 days.
So hang on, so even if there's a threat to life, you've gone to the Airbnb, but there's a serious threat to life to the young person and the well-being of the family, and they still might not even fit the criteria.
In that situation, they will fit the criteria, because they might have been coming from already a placed home.
Okay.
But I'm saying in terms of your question, the B&B in general, for someone who's applying for homeless, the only the threshold is a priority need. Whilst the housing initial team conduct an assessment, we place them in interim accommodation. That's likely to be a B&B, but also that varies depending on availability. But if they are in an interim accommodation, it's going to more likely be a B&B, or, you know, if it's a mum who's pregnant, maybe a studio, but it's what's available. And then once they are duty accepted, then they can be moved into our temporary accommodation to somewhere more, the most suitable at the time.
Naomi?
At the time.
So to go back to the first question, if with a household that's in fear, right? So we see it on two folds. So what happens is, if you're in settled accommodation, permanent accommodation, Part 6 accommodation, and you need to flee, like Brooklyn said, they will come through the temporary accommodation route. Then we'll house them temporarily whilst they're trying to get a management transfer. So that's got to be agreed at the MARAC panel. So that's where all professionals sit together, housing, social services, police, support workers, youth offenders.
And that panel, does that happen quite quick?
It happens once a month. Every local authority has
I've attended as well,
They happen once a month.
Sorry to interrupt you, but before we continue. All right, so let's say today's Monday now. Monday, the situation happens on Monday now, threat to life.
No, we'll house you there and then.
Okay, right.
But the panel will discuss. So, for example, let's just say, I don't know, Joe Bloggs today has fled and we need to place him. He will get placed.
Right, okay.
But his case will be heard at panel whenever, if it's in 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time.
Okay.
But he will be placed straight away. So they will go to panel. They will discuss. There will be actions for everyone that has to be agreed. Who's going to do what? How's it going to be facilitated? Now, what I find is that when families are fleeing domestic abuse, right, or gang violence, there's two different legislations. So Domestic Abuse Act was updated in July 2021. That is your family, your partner.
And the children.
Right? And that's what they deem as domestic abuse. Now, if you are fleeing, what happens is, it goes to that MARAC panel and they agree whether or not a management transfer is going to be agreed. Now, what I do find is, if you're coming from a local authority, a council property in Part 6, you get it quite quick. But if you're coming from a housing association, like they don't agree it. It takes such a long time and it's a fight and a battle. Now, if that housing officer that done that Part 7 application, the homeless application, takes more than 56 days, by default, a lot of time you have to be duty accepted, which means you're now back on the homeless register and you've got to bid all over again.
That's the disparities between the housing association and local authority.
Right. And that frustrates me so much, because that Domestic Abuse Act that came in July 2021 is to make sure that you keep a like for like and you don't lose your social tenancy.
Oh, I'm so glad you said this.
So can you repeat
that again, please? Actually, say it to your camera.
Hey, don't turn around, you know.
So the Domestic Abuse Act that came in July 2021 basically states that if you're in a social accommodation and you're fleeing, you should get a like for like. You should not lose your social tenancy.
Right.
But like I said, housing associations take so long in agreeing it, and their excuses are all the time. We don't have stock, we don't have properties, you're a local authority, you have bigger stock. We hear it all the time. And then sometimes it has to get so complex that we have to do a reciprocal, where we give you one of our properties
and we take one of yours.
But that has to go to like director level
of housing.
It shouldn't even have to go to that stage. You should follow the law regardless. And then what happens is that resident loses that social tenancy and has to start their whole homeless route all over again.
So you know, and also sorry, Rob. So just to say, also, you know what you just said about director level. The DCS of housing also has to talk to the DCS of children's services as well, and then they've got to talk to their counterparts to get it agreed. That's how complex it is. But go on, man, go on.
Are residents aware of this? Because from what you're saying to me, this is about rights, the rights of the actual resident or the person. So are they aware of their rights?
I don't think they are. And I'm going to be so transparent. I don't think they are. I think it is down to the officer that is seeing that resident there and then for them to give them that information. Because when you're in that state of mind of fleeing, you're scared, you're homeless, I'm not thinking about policy A, B, C, D,
No, you're not.
No, you're not,
You know, get me somewhere safe.
Right. So it's for that officer to make sure they enforce that and allow that resident to have the options and understand what we're going to be going through.
Okay.
So I don't think they understand, and it's not something that's publicised. It's not out there for to pick up like a repair book or it's not out there. They don't understand. It's our jargon. It's housing's jargon. I don't think they understand. Because I've seen so many people lose their social tenancies because of that reason, and it frustrates me because it's so sad. Because I know going back through that homeless route again, it's going to take about 15, 16 years, 17, 18 years. Your kids will get housed before you. So if on the front door, on the front, the frontline officers are not giving the right information, it's not going to help them. But then we also see it on the other side. So that's just if you're unsettled and coming in for temporary accommodation. But if you're in temporary accommodation, you're fleeing temporary accommodation, again, you'll be moved wherever we have. It will happen imminently, but you'll be moved wherever we have. And that could be anywhere. And what I do find our challenge is, when people are fleeing, they want to, like, for example, if we're here on road A, they want to be moved to road E. They're happy to go to road E. When actually, hold on, that's a 5-minute, 10-minute walk.
The danger and risk is still there.
So it then starts to go question about how much in danger are you that you still want to remain 5 roads away from where the incident took place.
Right.
Now, I understand a lot of the time, it depends on the severity of the case. Each case is generic, but it depends, because it's like, is it just like a neighbour dispute?
Right,
where he's like, or she's like, you know, drunk all the time, or, you know, that's fine. 5 roads down the road couldn't be so bad. But when it's a constant thing, like it's a domestic abuse situation going on, that's a bit like, you know, your safety comes first. But getting that through to residents isn't the easiest. They want to remain where they want to remain. And that is a challenge we face. But reality is, you're still in danger, but then there is no law saying they can't stay in the same borough they're fleeing from. So, there isn't a law saying that.
So I suppose to a degree, you're working in connection to a degree, I suppose, with the police, or if there is a DV. But in terms of safeguarding and the risk assessment, how is that brought together?
Well, that is, again, so with housing, we do suitability assessments. So we'll ask the family where you're working, where your kids go to school, do you have a carer, how much money you're earning, because you've got to meet LHA, which is local housing allowance for the rent. So all of that, the income will be taken into consideration. Do you drive? You know, we've got placement policy in terms of location, how far it takes you to drop your kids to school, to work. You know, we've got to meet a certain placement policy. So there's so much that goes into place in their household, and then having to work with the stock we have is such a challenge. The risk assessment will come again if you know, if the police say that, you know, they've put like a catchment area where they can't go, you know, there's, you know, injunctions and things like that. We have to work with that as well. Again, if they're MAPA registered, they'll have places where they can't be near schools,
and also the local authority children's services as well, our own assessments as well under Section 17. So all of that, they're on child protection. Are they able to move if they're on child protection? Because a lot of people have the stigma is that if you're on child protection, they have to remain in the borough. Actually, no. Safety comes before that. If they are on child protection and they're fleeing, the social services will have to advise us whether or not they're happy for us to move them. If I move them, you'll have to transfer the child protection. And
to
then your legislation will feed into our one, Pan London, to transfer out to another local authority as well. Be a transfer out conference, transfer in conference to that local authority.
I want to ask all of you another question, right? Because
I've got so much to ask you now. Literally.
Do you know what it is? Because I've been dealing with housing quite in depth with my young people. So, just 2 quick questions, right? Housing before COVID and housing now. What's the difference?
Go on, Nevada.
Housing. Well, I wasn't working in housing before COVID, but I managed semi-independent unit. So, I would say it's increased.
Okay. Well, for good, negative, positive, good or better?
I think for the worst, personally.
Oh, okay. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Definitely.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Brooklyn?
Yeah, I'd probably say the same.
Yeah.
I think obviously the number of people, whether they've kind of realised that they've had like a relationship breakdown or a change of their work circumstance, whatever it may be, more people are needing that local authority help. But it's not there,
it's just not there.
It's so restricted. And kind of like policies and legislation is very like one size fits all, and it's, as you'll know, it's not like that. It is like a case by case situation. And you can't kind of handle all cases with one approach. It just doesn't work. And it's kind of what we said before with like the how at risk you are. It's really hard to explain to someone who kind of wants to be near their support network. They want to be near schools and what they know, but it's like your life is at risk. And kind of that having to pull them away from what they know and kind of what's familiar for the kind of greater good of their life.
I've got do you know what? Rob, I think we've got to do a second panel. You know,
no, we do.
Yeah, we do. I think we have to.
I need to ask one more question before we end though.
I've got one more question, and I'll let you ask a question. Yeah. But I actually think we got to do a second panel.
We never got
Sorry. Don't know me. I'm not. Don't know me. Yeah. Go on. Sorry, know me. Sorry.
I think after COVID, things got much worse. you know, you had people that couldn't afford to live in their accommodations anymore. The landlord who were privately renting to the council couldn't live where they were privately renting before, so they want their property back, which is kind of like the landlord wanting their property back. You had the spike of domestic abuse go through the roof, which is why the Domestic Abuse Act came into place and updated.
Yes.
So yeah, it definitely has got out of control. There is lack of accommodation, and like Brooklyn said, the policies don't allow certain criteria to be able to get housing, because if you're able to work and you're able to function day to day, you can go private rent, but your salary is not matching that private rent market.
Yeah,
it's
definitely
true.
not.
So-
Yeah, definitely not.
Bro, you get paid and your money's
Heavy
gone.
on that.
Yeah. Your money's gone. You get
Crazy.
paid, your
Yeah.
money's gone.
Because you know, right, yeah? So a couple of months ago, took a young person, well, actually, talking about before COVID and after COVID, right, yeah? So before COVID, I know a lot of young people. All right, I'm gonna they say, Robert, what should I do? Listen, just go over your black bag, yeah, and just go to the desk, right, yeah? Now, this is before COVID now. So before COVID, and this 9 times out of 10, the actual local authority would actually help the young person with a hotel for the night or find a placement. This is actually before COVID. In the last 4 years now, oh my God, the young person will go to the desk, they give them a piece of paper, they say, yeah, ring up these phone numbers. There's a telephone at the end of the desk. They pick up the phone, they ring up, they can't get through to none of the organisations, right? Yeah, and then it's you have to apply online.
Yeah.
Now hang on a minute, that young person hasn't got no data in his phone. How are you supposed to like make the application by himself online?
Yeah.
That's a big frustration for me.
I think that's a big thing, like making our services accessible to people.
Yeah.
Oh, yep.
I find in the borough I work, a lot of people, like, English isn't their first language,
Yeah.
or they're elderly, their children have moved and they don't live locally. It's not as easy as go onto a website and complete this form, or log into a housing portal and kind of upload it on
or
here.
get an interpreter to help you.
Absolutely. I think that's a big thing, like being accessible, and so that they can reach you, or kind of like, oh, if you call this number, it's like a generic number, and or you leave a message and you get some, it's not good enough. It's not. And it can be like disheartening, I find. Or they're told kind of like, yeah, if you log it here, someone will get back to you in X amount of time.
And they won't get back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they won't get back to you.
I think for our local authority, I think we're quite good in that aspect. We're about our residents' journey. That's what we talk about a lot. So everything we do, at the heart of what we do is our residents' journey. It's around customer focus. So we've never shut our services. Our doors are always open. We're downstairs. We're on the phones. We're going out into hubs. We are out in the community, because we saw that need. Language barrier.
Like, what's going on?
But that's what I'm saying. It's good there. Yeah. I don't need to tell us, bro.
I think all local authorities work differently. That's one thing I would definitely say. They all work differently. They've all got their own internal policies. But yeah, I would definitely say our local authority is very much hands-on. You're held to account, and residents' journey is at number one.
Yeah.
Of everything you do. It's at the heart of what you do. So yeah, I think it's different local authorities.
I'm going to be honest with you. Sorry, go on.
No, I agree. Yeah, with the resident journey being at the focal point, definitely.
I think it's at the point of like, our jobs cannot just be done at a desk.
Yeah.
Like, I think it is about being in the community, being
100%.
seen, like being heard. You can't do our job from behind the desk. Like, you can't sit behind a desk and just say, oh, I completely understand what you're going through. Like, you need to go into people's homes. You need to see what they're experiencing. You need to meet their family. You need to see how they live to actually understand and then know how to deal with a situation. Because it's so easy to just sit on the end of the phone and be like, oh, it's probably really bad for you. But you've got to have that, like that empathetic side. You've got to go and be involved and like show up for people.
But also, since lockdown, since COVID, a lot of us work from home now. That has changed the dynamic of the local authority. A lot of services are no longer in the building.
They're all remote.
I know
Yes,
housing
you're right,
benefit,
you're right.
council tax, those kind of things. Even social services work from home a lot. We all work from home, but it's a lot more than it was. So that has also changed the service that residents are getting, because people want to work from home.
I'm very big on
presume.
well-being and mental health, right?
Yeah.
So as practitioners individually, right? Yeah. Because I'm going to be honest with you, right? I think since Sia and even today, right? Yeah. I'm going to be honest with you. I was one of them guys. Housing? They're what this shit? What they do? No, but you see now, like I've got a different sort of respect.
Flip the script now. Yeah.
No, I really do, right?
Yeah.
And because I know you guys mentally and emotionally, it must be
go through it,
draining.
yeah.
But in terms of looking after yourselves, like mentally, in terms of well-being and mental health, and looking after yourselves mentally and emotionally, how are you looking
How are you
after yourself?
managing?
Yeah, how are you switching off? Because listen, like, how are you switching off? Important, man. Like, you shouldn't, like.
I don't actually know the answer to that question. I don't think I switch off. Like I said, when in the shower, I'm thinking, oh, did I do this? Or did it? Or like, when I come in, I've got to do this.
Yeah.
Or I work crazy hours.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be sending emails on a Sunday at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's the type of person I am. And that's the passion and drive
Sound like
I
a
have.
social worker.
Yeah. But that's the demand that we have. You know, like I said, my decisions and my timely manner impact someone's life. So
Yeah.
I can't switch off, and that's the truth. And then also as well, we're on call as well, 24 hours. So I can't switch off. But for my well-being, our local authority offers so much support in terms of they do pottery lessons, they do like yoga, they do like boxercise, we've got swimming, like they have like counselling, we've got an OT downstairs. Like we have so much support in that element.
That's good, you know.
Very good. Yeah.
But I do also think if you're going to access it, who's got time to actually go to it? That's the next thing. So
That's
it's about
true.
learning to
Yeah.
shut off and actually manage your time effectively, and knowing that 9 to 5, this is where I'm at. But it's not just a 9 to 5, like I said.
Yeah, 9 to 5,
You know, but
yeah.
you kind of have to learn to shut things off. Some things are just out of your control, and you have to accept it. You know, if you've given the right information, you know, you've shown them the right path, then you kind of have to learn to shut it out.
Yeah.
Nevada?
Yeah, there is a lot of support where I work, so it is about managing the time to get the support, which doesn't happen as much because we're very busy. But also I just try to speak to friends and family. A lot of my friends and circle are in the industry anyway, so they are my free agony aunts, do you know what I mean? So, you know, and it is helpful that you've got like-minded people around you who know what you're going through. But also it's just about building your resilience, knowing when to stop, knowing when you need time off, take that leave, be sick, take the time off, do you know what I mean? So just know your body, know yourself, and just focus on you.
Can I ask a quick question, yeah?
Go on.
Yeah. I was going to listen, yeah? Are you happy you made the pivot out of social work to housing?
I am.
Yeah.
For different reasons.
You see it,
I am smiling.
That's what she's like.
I am.
He was laughing, innit?
No, don't say that. I knew. Do you know, it's different. It's just different. But I can see, as you were saying before, I was very angry at housing. Coming from a frontline social work team. Angry, like, what? Just move them. Like, what's going on? Like, just give them. It's not possible. It's got different red tape. There's different legislations.
There you go.
It's very demanding. There's no win.
I can
Do
imagine.
you know what I mean? But I guess for me, I think I have a better work-life balance in housing than I do social work.
Okay.
I think I do.
Interesting.
But I don't know if that's because I've changed as a person in terms of my boundaries are different. But I feel like I could lock off a bit earlier than 6.
No,
in
that's
social work,
good.
I was doing assessments on weekends.
It's true.
I do not, well, don't always. I have done, this is what I'm saying. I have, but that's because it was for her.
No, good. And Brooklyn?
Sort of similar to what's already been said. I think a big thing is knowing that like you can only do sort of so much before it's like you're waiting for like the next part of the process or like the next kind of agency to sort of do their part. In our role, we kind of promote a lot of like things within the community or like kind of like resident associations, and they'll kind of like hold a space and put things on for residents, or just to promote that kind of togetherness for them and that sense of community, because I think after COVID a lot of places lost that. But yeah, as you said, kind of take your leave, know that kind of you can only do so much, there's so many hours in a day, and like when it does get to 6 o'clock, kind of other service areas they have logged off, they have left.
It's true.
You can't do much after that time. And knowing that a lot of cases are ongoing, it's kind of not, it's really rare that you pick up a case, you deal with it, and then that's the end of it. It is ongoing, and just know that as long as you're doing what you can and you're making them aware of what's available, like residents, what's available to them, giving them their options, giving them that support, I think. And as you say, like, see your friends, speak to your family, offload.
Listen, I want to say, I want to thank all three of you for coming today.
Absolutely amazing.
But do you know what? Because we've spoken about so much, I think there's so much that we haven't spoken about neither.
Yeah.
And we absolutely need to do
two.
a part 2.
100%.
So me and Rob are saying is there's going to be another panel
100%.
with all of you back here again, because I think there's bits around domestic abuse we didn't touch upon, other bits that we want to touch upon. But I just want to say thank you so much to Nevada, Naomi, and Brooklyn for bringing their expertise. And I think people, when you watch this, it will give a different lens to housing, because you've heard a lot in terms of policy, procedure, legislation, caseloads, and there's so much else we didn't cover. So no, just thank you so much, all of you, for coming on today.
Applause, man.
Thank you.
Amazing, man.
But literally, guys, you know where to find myself and Rob. You like, subscribe, and share.
Follow the Patreon.
And thank you
like
so much
and
to our
subscribe
guests again. And we'll see you soon.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. That's it.